Texas Sustainability Indicators Project. This is a really cool initiative on its own. Former head of the Austin Neighborhood Association, and he's the vice chairman of the Envision Central Texas Board. So we have a great topic, and we have just the right people to talk about it, so let me turn it over to Steiner.
Okay, well, Michael asked if I would provide some background first, because some of you are ECT, are I'm sure very familiar with ECT, and others are new to Austin and know nothing about this. So what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to fly through what Austin is about an hour to talk. Just do it real quickly and just lay out the background as quickly as I can. Starting with the big picture, we're in the first urban century. Over half the world's population now live in the cities. There are about 2 billion people on the planet. At the beginning of the 20th century, 6.3 billion people now, going to go up to about 9 billion in the next 30 years. About 2/3 of the world's population will be living in cities. One of the interesting aspects of all that is by the year 2030, half of everything that's built will have been built between 2000 and 2030. So what we're facing in the next 25 years is very rapid growth. And unlike much of the rest of the so-called developed world, the United States is growing. This is some of the consequences of land north of Austin in 1951, like 1995. This is down around Barton Creek in 1951. This is what it looked like a few years ago, and since then, there's been a wisdom of, so this is decay, that's been straight or screwed up even more since the picture's been taken, and much of this, a lot of the other area has been developed as well. I live in this slide. This is where decay. I live right here. Anyway, so the question is, do we plan to go from this? This is Austin. The red block is Austin in 1955. These slides were developed, this group of them, by Barbara Parmenter, who was so recently on our faculty. This is Austin in 73, Austin 83, Austin 91, 2000. So if we were a group of physicians sitting around looking at x-rays, and this was a body instead of a landscape, we would sort of maybe get a little concerned about this. The highest spot in Austin is Mount Cornell. This is what it looked like in 1980. Like now. So that's all the bad stuff that happens. Suburban sprawl, decline of biodiversity, social inequalities, crime, all kinds of bad impacts, including our health. We're getting fatter. What is it, about 20% of Americans are now obese, up from about 15% a decade ago. Or overweight. There's overweight and obese, and somewhere I have statistics. We're getting fatter. Our ways of living are viewed as one cause of weight. Spending more time in automobiles. A lot of time just sitting around on mobile. This is previously from the Atlanta Constitution, which would be from the American State Prison. There's a whole bunch of drivers. Global change won't go into today. But essentially, we face a challenge with loss of identity, regional identity, and cultural value. A little bit more, I'm going from sort of real global really quickly to our area, more specifically. One of the 10 fastest growing regions in the United States is what's called the Texas Triangle, which is the Dallas-Fort Worth area, the Houston area, the San Antonio, this area right here. Another of the 10 fastest growing areas in the United States is the Gulf region. So here in Texas and along with the Gulf of Mexico, we're in 2 of the 10 fastest growing parts of the United States. What I think is just remarkable about this slide, where'd that come from? Thank you. Backwards is which one? Okay, that's off. Okay. If you look at Texas from space, this green part of Texas sort of stand out. This is also there's the green part. It's at the edge of the Edwards Plateau and Blackland Prairie. So to the west of Austin, very rich groundwater. To the east, very productive farmland. And right at that edge is Honey's Canyonlands and the Edwards Plateau. This is where Austin fits in that green part. And if we are to look at that area, the area between Austin and San Antonio, this is the Edwards Aquifer. When Native Americans were here, there's a great amount of springs that come from this interface between this area and this area. So a whole lot of Native American settlements and Indian settlements along this area. The Spanish came, they formed missions along here, and then German settlers and then American settlers came into this area. Then these are my, I check out take it away. How does it appear so I don't touch the button? You don't want that to happen. No. This is the escape button. That's the first one. Okay, this is a series of, these are fun slides to show because anywhere else in the world or the United States, people have an image of what Texas is. And these are like the beautiful hill country flying. This is Texas from around here. It's really quite a beautiful place. These are 2 guys looking at a hole. Basically, the groundwater recharge in this area through this kind of karst topography means that there's very rapid recharge of groundwater. This is, of course, Barton Creek, where people swim naked with salamanders, dangerous species. Naked. The people or the salamanders? The salamanders get embarrassed. And then these are some maps of the watershed in the aquifer zone. And also just how rich the Blackland prairies are, the richest farmland soils in Texas. The red areas show the fast growing areas, the green show the most productive farmland, and essentially most of the growth in the state is occurring in the most productive farmland. Some of the growth is like this, spread out like this. So those are some of the impacts in this area, and so that gets us to Envision Central Texas. One of the responses to this rapid growth, Dallas has gone through a comprehensive plan very similarly, and what Envision Texas doubling in population in the next 20, 30 years. We're about 1.25 million people now. That's going to double to 2.5 million people. Meanwhile, the Texas Triangle area will go up to 10 to 12 million people. Envision Central Texas is a private nonprofit organization supported by government or non-government organization. The traditional approach is planning is you take the present and you project the future. And we base the vision Texas is called a scenario approach. And John Freganese and Kelthorpe were our consultants through the process. John Freganese calls the scenario approach as a way of telling stories about the future. So the way of dealing with the future. I think that John always uses this in Texas because if it's used by the military and business, it's seen as like people who made it. It's supposed to lend credibility, I think. And it's stories, not predictions, with consequences, and so on. These are some images of the scenario process that we went through. It's kind of interesting now, the work that Robin's been involved in New Orleans. I see some of the same images. Now our people are using the Freganese slides. But a technique that Freganese and Kelthorpe pioneered was basically getting large groups of people together around maps and then saying, well, we're going to double the population. And you can see these people all have these little square boxes, and they all stand for different things. And then get people to put those on maps and then present them and say, well, I like this and I like that. And then the maps are digitized. And I should have mentioned, Michael alluded to it. This is a 5-county effort. And in the past, usually Austin did this kind of stuff on its own, maybe with Travis County, and then basically made all of our neighbors unhappy with whatever we did. So whatever sort of semi-progressive thing Austin brought up in the area for planning, it made the other jurisdictions unhappy. They would go to the state legislature and have them undone. That's an oversimplification, but not much more. So the difference in this is Travis County, which is where Austin is located, Williamson County, Bastrop County, Caldwell County, Kings County. So from these workshops, all the various ideas of over 1,000 people at the workshops were digitized. Then scenarios were built using land use and transportation models. And then these scenarios, a number of scenarios were built. The important thing is the amount of money for transportation and the number of people projected were held constant. Only each of the scenarios went in different directions as far as where the people would be located. And this is existing conditions. The red stuff is the areas that are built up already. You can see this is I-35, and this is Austin. The green stuff is stuff that's already protected. The light green stuff is farm and ranch land. The pink stuff is low density development. Scenario A was basically business as usual. We're not supposed to name these, but I name them anyway. Not in my other capacity, but when I'm outside of Boston County. Scenario A is what if we don't do anything, just double the population. These are the the transportation elements that go in. Toll road, particular toll road is State Highway 140. And commuter rail. This was done before we had approval for our first commuter rail line, but one was projected. So what would it look like? Pretty lousy, pretty much like it is now. Lots of sprawl. This is an unofficial ECT slide because a well-known big box retail company at one point objected to the use of their product to show business as usual in a negative way. Anyway, so that, more Walmarts, more with scenario A, there'd be about 500,000 more acres developed, some redeveloped. We would be spending 68 minutes a day sitting in our automobiles. The aquifer recharge area, there would be about 40,000 developed. And there would be relatively few new jobs located in low-income areas. Scenario B is essentially would follow many of the major transportation areas. Again, these are the various things. This is what life would be like in scenario B. Again, Walmart would still be there. There would be some improvement. You can see instead of about 400,000 acres, about 192 would be redeveloped, or be developed. More area redeveloped, less land, less time commuting, number of recharge area land reduced, and still not a lot of jobs in low-income areas. Scenario C, I called it, it's for the architect's vision, because there are a lot of architects involved in these workshops, and they all like new towns. They're not living in new towns, but they like new towns. So we got a bunch of new towns with scenario C. This is what it would look like. Again, same major transportation routes. There would be these existing courthouse towns with more new towns that's like that, Bastrop. More conservation development. And you can see the number of acres has gone down pretty substantially. Will be developed. More will be redeveloped. Reducing the amount of commuting time, reducing very dramatically the amount of land over the aquifer that was developed, and many more jobs in lower income areas. Scenario D, if scenario C is the architect's vision, scenario D is the planner's vision. So instead of new towns, you get infill. Planners love infill, except when it comes to your neighborhood. So what we get in scenario D is lots and lots of infill. You get light rail, new rail. What would it look like downtown to get taller? I guess both the architects and planners like espressos or more coffee shops. More rail. But you can see in scenario D, we're down to same number of people, same amount of cost, but instead of almost 400,000 acres of land developed, 85,000. A lot more redeveloped land, a lot more jobs in low-income areas, and more aquifer land developed in scenario C, but still much fewer than this. So Jim is an expert on indicators. So a number of indicators were developed to look at the impact of each of those scenarios. One of the is land use. You can see the 2000, how much urbanized land there is. With business as usual, you get this big spike of new urbanized land, and then it goes down to scenario C. Transportation shares, how many people would be walking and biking, how many people would be transit. Another indicator, this is a John Fregonese slide. There's the other one that shows all the people individually. But those people are all symbolically on class service. The environment, impervious surface is really bad for groundwater. more impervious surface, the faster the runoff, the higher the likelihood of flooding, less, it's built back, the salamanders hate it. Impervious surface kills those little salamanders on the creek. So it's a good indicator of environment. Recharge and contributing zones, how much is developed there. Ranch and ag land, housing, mix. One thing that I thought was interesting about all these scenarios, and when you compare it to, say, Envision Utah or Metropolis 2030 or whatever it's called in Chicago, Texas is still, even in the most aggressive mix, has a single-family home still dominates. So it's kind of interesting in all the scenarios. The economy, how much new infrastructure costs. And then there were a number of sort of Calthorpe Associates. There's two firms, Breganese Calthorpe and Calthorpe Associates. Obviously, Calthorpe's in both of them. Calthorpe Associates did a number of sort of detailed plans for specific sites in the area. This is a so-called Featherlight site over in East Austin. And this is along one of the projected rail corridors. And by the way, all this stuff is on our website, the ECT website. And these things are actually fairly underutilized, but very good. They have all these cool drawings of what development would look like on this site, in plan view and so on. A number of our studios in the School of Architecture have also taken on this area and use the same areas as studio sites. This is one done by Stephen Moore's studio. Stephen Moore's done work. I think Michael, you and Elizabeth Dancy did some work. The Landscape Architecture Studio did some. I really like actually what the architecture students did. They used GIS and they took a very environmental look. It's kind of heartening to me that maybe the architects have been more environmental in their studio than either the planners or the landscape architects. But so this is some of their overlay maps looking at the same area. What grabs my heart is that this is architects, and one of the students basically did the Featherlight site for animal accommodation. So he basically did a land use plan for animals, which was pretty neat. So this is where he was zoning the place for frogs and possum and came up with a pretty cool plan. Kent Butler's students have also done similar sites. So we've been using these as studio projects as well. So there's been an ongoing linkage between ECT and the School of Architecture. So we asked people what they think about these scenarios. This was something that appeared in the newspaper. And this is scenario A, B, C, D, and then you got to mix and match. So if you liked what was happening here with scenario B over, so you could vote straight party line, or you could mix and match the various indicators. It's kind of cool. Got about 13,000, 14,000, depending on which number you believe, responses. By contrast, the public participation after Ground Zero in New York, City of Manhattan, or New York City, 12 million people, they got 5,000 responses. So city, it was a scientific survey, you could do it online. There was a pretty good protocol that you couldn't vote twice. I tried just to test it. You probably could use 5 different computers and vote more than once, but they were pretty good as far as preventing you from voting more than once. So, I mean, I think you might be able to guess which of these And my esteemed colleagues on the executive committee vetoed us having a map. And then a couple of years later,
It was a close vote.
It was 14-1. But then,
Wait, in actuals, that is close.
in later days, we saw the wisdom of actually putting together a map, which we did. And that vote wasn't close. It was, I don't think anybody voted against it. One of the best things about the map, though, is there's no jurisdictional boundaries, no boundary boundaries. So we're into implementation, and some of the outcomes. And we'll be talking about these. I'm going to be quiet in a second. A couple of years ago now, over a year ago, our mayor one morning announced, he had founded, he'd been with these guys, one of the founders of the Envision Central Texas. They didn't tell the board, and we got this announcement that have an Envision Central Texas City Bond Initiative one morning. It probably didn't come to the executive committee because we realized that we tried to leak it to the press and also
Easier to ask forgiveness than permission.
yes. So half of the citizens appointed to the bond advisory committee were from ECT, including the three of us. We made a recommendation last January. The city, we were hoping for a May election. The city delayed it until November, but we now have 7 steps to a better Austin. It'll be on the ballot in a few weeks, so we're moving ahead with that.
How many of you are registered here to vote?
If you're good, you might, or if you're, anyway, those are, we're moving ahead with that. Maybe a lesson is think globally, act locally, but plan regionally. And so I think I'm going to end there. And maybe since I'm talking, I'll give my first take on it and then turn it over to Robin and Jim.
Just leave out the outcomes, possible ECT outcomes.
Sure. This is what we saw as the possible outcomes. One thing Michael wanted us to do is sort of take a break and sort of say, what really happened? I think a couple things have happened with ECT. One is we have become a catalyst in the region for certain activities. We're very good at organizing events where lots of people come. We feeling good. I think we've moved the transportation agenda ahead in the region pretty well. Before ECT was formed, there was a regional rail initiative that narrowly defeated. After the vision was adopted, a commuter rail line was approved. I think ECT played a role in that. And it's being built. There are other transportation systems also underway. State Highway 130, which was already planned and being built for State Highway, or for ECT. We've been engaged in lots of meetings about that and possibly will influence the planning of State Highway 130. The city of Austin and several other cities like Leander have moved ahead with transit-oriented development ordinances, which have been enacted, and it's influenced by ECT. Green in the area of open space, Robin has led a lot of our open space efforts. There's now a 5-county green printing work going on with the Trust for Public Land. It would have occurred in Travis County with or without ECT, probably. ECT played a pretty important role in getting that extended to the other 4 counties. The bond, it's called an ECT bond. It's still, I think, influenced by ECT. If you look at the 7 steps, transportation, water quality, park, economy, and affordable housing all are pretty strongly tied to ECT. Probably there wouldn't be an affordable housing component without ECT. I would just argue that. Maybe there would be, but I think the ECT representation on the citizen bond, it wasn't recommended in the initial city proposal, and so it was after the citizens referendum, or citizens committee, so I think we could take some credit for that. ECT does a recognition program of best practices, and we give awards for things, and I think that's one of those events that I think we do pretty well. And we are moving ahead to develop a toolbox of best practices, a partnership that ECT is doing with the School of Architecture. Bob Patterson and others are working on that, and many of you can have an opportunity to contribute. We, for a lot of reasons, have not taken stand on individual issues, although we are always asked to. And so we tried to stay regional in our focus, and I'm going to end there. So that's, I talked longer than I should, but that's a very condensed, fast version of ECT background. So Robin?
Well, actually, I Jim might be the best person to go next. Just follow up on some of the things. I might have some of the tougher things to say, so maybe we'll read that clean up that.
I think at a 5-year mark, it's important to remember what the genesis, part of the genesis was in 2001. From several different angles, there was a need. The whole regionalism thing was really becoming apparent. Campo had just done a peer review where one of the critiques of the Campo planning process, Campo is our capital area metropolitan planning organization. Everyone know what that is? Okay. So one of the critiques had been that you don't have a regional plan. You're approving road stuff and you don't have any kind of plan about how that all fits together. There was that. There was, the environmental battles out southwest still had no kind of light at the end of the tunnel. They were just getting increasingly worse. I think we had just recently lost our region on a fab plant because we couldn't pull ourselves together as a region on economic development. So you had several different kind of pressures happening at once. So the question now is, are we actually out of any of that pressure? And you probably have to say no. We still have a confusion about what the umbrella plan is for mobility and transportation. The toll road plan does not give a whole lot of people confidence that it is a regional solution. Transit's still trying to find its own systemic kind of argument or rationale for why it needs to exist. Economic development is still an issue. You still have small communities fighting for small employers, and we still don't have a regional business plan or regional economic development plan. So, and then the other thing that can't kind of go without saying, because a lot of this stuff is successful or not based on the leadership, on personalities, on charisma. So a guy named Neil Kasurik was the chair of this from day one until the day that he suddenly passed away. And ECT took a long time, and we're still trying to establish an independent identity from his identity. Now, just the fact that we're still here, that we're invited to things like this to present what's happened and what's happening, I think is some token mark that ECT is going to continue, ideas of it are going to continue. So that's important. Fritz mentioned that what ECT does well 5 years out is convene big groups of people. We talk about big topics with smart people, and people go away happy. I do that at parties on Saturday night too. So I think you got to build on what you're good at. So you build on that kind of strength, and you go out and you do more work. So that gets into kind of the gap between expectations of Envision Central Texas and what we've actually done. And I think from and this is Robin probably getting into this a little bit, from the different advocate views, whether it's economic development, environmental, neighborhood, there were hopes and dreams for what ECT would help them achieve that were beyond what anything ECT has actually done so far. And I don't know if that gap is inevitable or if we have, I think it's too early to say we failed. We certainly probably haven't done as much as we could have, but it's closing that gap is what we do. And next Friday, we're all going to a retreat out in Bastrop to actually have this kind of conversation. But how do you start closing that gap between how do you help all the different particular angles on the community and what we're trying to be, who we want to be, how does ECT help add value to those things and what we're trying to achieve? So that's going to be kind of the test as we go forward. And how you apply the tools you have. The Central Texas Sustainability Indicators Project, which I'm executive director of, and which kind of launched in 1999, 2000, around the same time that this idea was gelling. Kind of the overarching ideology is sustainability, and you apply indicators to efforts like Envision Central Texas, and then see how you're doing. Indicators, however, are not just data. It's data that's been converted into information. It's something that tells you a little bit about the story of a community. It's at a fine level. This is regional. This has to scale down. These indicators we have at the regional level about housing units, commute times, all that has to scale down to a neighborhood level where people actually do stuff, where action actually happens, whether it's with your church group, your neighborhood association, your neighbor, your PTA, whatever. That's what it's got to translate to, and then there's an iterative up and down. So, I guess the only other thing in terms of 5 years out, what we've achieved is people talk about ECT. The mayor calls a bond election and labels it the ECT bond election, which grates me because all it is a label, and you're kind of riding what you hope is a positive perception of that label. I mean, it's hard to draw a solid line between ECT and what's in that bond package, but that's a
I
whole
mean, the
other.
needs assessment was done before the announcement.
That's right.
The
So,
staff didn't have direction to make it an ECT bond election after the needs assessment was done.
well, they did, but the needs assessment is based on other criteria. If things in the city you got to fix. You know, I mean, we can talk about shape and growth all day long, but the pothole is still over here. You know, where you still have people buying lots in town, subdividing and adding and burdening the infrastructure, schools that are old, families aren't, you have other things going on at the same time. But it's out there. The paper talks about Envision Central Texas. That keeps it out there. Campo is doing a new smart growth concept to talk about population distribution, on which you start talking about transportation decisions. So that, you know, if you start to shift the thinking, even if I can't point to ECT as the reason why a shift happens, if the shift does happen and we start thinking more regionally, more sustainably, then I think we start saying we've done something. So those are my free association thoughts.
Well, a lot of y'all know me, and I just want to say it's so great to be back with you all. I love coming to talk to this class, mostly because on those days where I start to get pessimistic about the future, I remember that you guys are coming, what you're studying, how you're applying yourselves, what you decide to do with your careers, what you do with your work, is infinitely important. It's more important than what we've done with ours. And I'm glad to be talking about this topic today because for a lot of different reasons, I think it sums up the challenge of both of our generations. Not to get too corny, but and I'm trying to decide in my mind how tough to be on this project. I think there are too many people in this room that know me too well. And I would love to give you the happy talk version of how great ECT is and how excited I am. And, you know, I would just love to do that. And I don't think my conscience is going to let me do that. And At the same time, I don't want to be so hard on it that we walk away feeling, a sense of despair. So maybe what I should do is say what I love about ECT, and then I'm going to tell you why I'm incredibly frustrated. What I love about it is, as Fritz showed, it's a beautiful dream. It's the best dream for Austin that I've seen. And as an activist, I've heard a lot of different people's dreams for our town. This is a beautiful dream for these reasons. It's all about sustainability. It interconnects all the things that we really need. It talks about the environment, but it also talks about the economy. It talks about housing. It talks about affordability. It talks about equity. It's got all the different components that we need to really build a sustainable community. I'd love it if I didn't say anything else. Part of me just wants to say, let's love this dream because it's important and it's beautiful and we desperately need it. Part of me wants to stop right there and say, just walk away from this dream and love this dream and wish it well. The problem is, it's not enough to love a dream. It's not enough to have a dream. You have to make it work. You have to make progress on the ground. We have to have impact. We cannot sit around, be very comfortable, pat ourselves on the back, be complacent about having a dream, but not catalyzing it. In Austin, Texas in 2006, that is unconscionable. I think it's morally irresponsible, and it's economically stupid, and it's grossly unfair to say we built a beautiful vision, but we're busy with other things, or we're too worried about everybody being happy to actually make it work. And so, and by the way, I want to conclude with an example. I think most of you know, I love Fritz. I think he's brilliant. I love working with him. Jim and I have been friends for many, many years, and have lots of balance, and I love him. And I have been on the ECT executive committee for 5 years and on the board, and I can honestly look in the mirror and say, I've done my best. I think these guys are great leadership for ECT. But if you look at the key elements of are we making the dream happen, the organization is just wildly underperforming. I just want to point out what we have done. We've assembled a great-looking board. It doesn't include enough women, minorities, or younger people, but other than that, it's a fabulous board. We've written, I just want to say, if you haven't actually read the ECT Vision, it's a beautiful thing. It's literally poetic. It's a thrilling document, and I'm a tough grader on documents. It's a great-looking piece of literature. We probably have assembled the best GIS tools that the region has ever had, or maybe will ever have. If you want to look at more maps like the ones Fritz showed, if you want to use them for your project, it's an incredible toolbox of GIS. We have had some cool conferences. And I think if there's a core competence to the organization, is get people together in a beautiful place and talk about sustainability, talk about planning, talk about corridors. We do that probably, we give a better party than almost any planning and sustainability organization. What we don't do is confront what we have to do to make change. We don't have the background yet. And I want to repeat what Jim said. We're 5 years old. We're only 5 years old. If you're an activist and you have an intense sense of urgency like I do, 5 years is like forever. It's still a young organization, but if it's going to do these outcomes, if we're going to get there, we have to have a lot more backbone. We have to be willing to say, what is it exactly that needs to be changed? Whose mind do we need to change? How do we get the investment we need to make these changes? How do we make that business case? How do we be persuasive? And yes, we can do that in a positive, relationship-friendly way, but we have to keep our eye on the ball. We can't just be content to throw a cool conference and have people walk away feeling happy and say, we've done our jobs. You're not going to build a sustainable Austin throwing a party. That's just never going to happen. What I think the organization needs to do, I will try to be as positive and inspiring about this as I can. It needs to communicate the vision. Not very many people in the region actually understand what this incredible vision is, and that's a huge problem. So we need to do that. The vision is very broad. It literally says more open space, more places around the region. We probably need to get more specific than that. We need to have a specific set of goals and a plan to reach a specific set of goals, a way of measuring that. We pretty much need a business case. We need to be able to talk about, if we do this plan, which is the plan, the reality that's going to happen if we just sit around and throw parties, this is how much it costs and who pays for it, what the benefits and trade-offs are. We really need to have that conversation very, very specifically. I think at the end of the day, if Austin ever becomes sustainable, and let's be really clear, this is not a sustainable town. More green thinking people per capita in Austin, Texas than anywhere in the country with the possible exception of Portland. So you have a lot of people that care about the environment, care about sustainability, but we don't have a sustainable city, far from it. We're one of the fastest growing towns in the country. We have some of the fastest rising pollution. We have, most disturbingly, we have a very rapidly expanding gap between those who have and those who have not. And we have problems, and guess what? They're getting worse pretty much by the minute. We need to start reversing that and going the other way. We need to really be able to communicate that in tangible terms. I just want to talk about the bond election for a second, because Fritz did a great job talking about I think what it looks like. And what it looks like is we're spending $1 billion, which is, we do that as a community once every 8 years. We decide how we're going to spend almost $1 billion. And this year it looks like we're spending $1 billion on ECT-related issues. That is not true, as Jim said. The bonds are important. I hope if you're a registered voter, you will vote for the bond package. Most of the bonds, almost all the money, I would say 90% of the money plus, is going to keep things the way they are. Fixing potholes, fixing schools where they are, fixing all that stuff. About 10% of what's in there is for open space and affordable housing kinds of things. Most of it is just fixed stuff that's, well, we can quibble about, whether it's 10 or 15%, not very much. I think the thing you need to know, and the thing to really think about in your own pursuits, is what is the right way, what's the best way to confront change, to catalyze change, but to do that in a way that's consensus-oriented, that's positive, that leaves people feeling happy. But it isn't enough to talk about a dream and to throw events that talk about a dream. We really have to have on-the-ground progress. And we need to wake up and have a sense of urgency about that. 5 years is a long time. I don't think at this current pace that in 5 years we'll be able to come back here and say, well, we're on the path to a sustainable Austin. We're going to have to step it up. We're going to have to change our level of aggressiveness, change our sense of urgency, and get very specific and measure whether we're making progress or not, and communicate that in a big, big way. And bottom line, I think we're going to need a lot of help to do that. We do have a pretty cool board, but we're going to need a lot more than what we have for this to really play out, and for us to look back and say, we built this out for y'all's generation and a generation beyond. So I hope that wasn't too negative, but try to be realistic.
Okay, then let's give a hand to our speakers. Two questions.
Michael, I appreciate the opportunity to have heard this, because many of us, I happen to be a practicing planner, still practicing, to be a planner, and I feel incredibly hampered in regard to our toolkit in the Austin region, in the state of Texas, especially. The city has done some very creative things. I've heard Fritz's phrase, legislate, litigate, which is the Austin approach. Is there a role for ECT in the expansion of the toolkit, which I think is badly needed in the state?
Two fronts on that we're doing right now. And the toolkit's been a concept that we've had for a long time, and to kind of, I guess, prove up what Robin's saying, we haven't gotten to it. But we are working with UT Austin here about looking at both the literature review and a kind of a case study model for all the different tools that are available in Texas, how they can be applied. One of the little committees that we have, which I'm chairing along with a woman named Carol Barrett, who is the head of neighborhood and planning and zoning in San Marcos, is to do another review of all the techniques that have been applied in Central Texas and probably in the state to create the kind of places that we want to be, to kind of speed up, to Robin's point, those techniques being applied else in other places they need to be. In doing that, you start to discover the gaps. We don't have any tools to handle the thing that we have here in front of us. And then you got to figure out whether it's a legislative remedy, whether it's a community kind of oriented remedy or what. So I can't give you a timeline on that, which is probably what you really
No, I guess my greatest fear is watching SH 130, an enormous opportunity, and we're going to watch over the next 10 or 15 years, it'll get completely frittered away. It's immensely frustrating to watch that, where in many states you would have zoning authority and other authority near that corridor that would give you a greater ability to deal with it for a longer term. I think that you guys have made some educational leaps and bounds. I see that in places like Pflugerville, for example, and there is some hope that they might apply tools that they have available. But what we don't really have are the big sort of hold off the marketplace tools that are available in other places. And we've not gotten our boundaries out fast enough to deal with getting those tools in place using existing communities. So those kinds of issues, we can talk all day long about the possible opportunities for SH 130, and each day goes by, someone flips the land for another purpose, which is underutilizing that opportunity.
well, the two, I think 130 is already lost.
Oh!
But when you start, but understand that when you start talking about a toolbox, and you talk about things like having tools where we can hold off the market, you've alienated a lot of people right there. Where we haven't expanded the boundaries fast enough. There are hard costs to the annexation stuff. I mean, whether I like it or not, it's not as, and obviously, it's not as simple as throwing the boundaries out. So our tools and our approaches need to take that kind of stuff and, okay, well, how do I have tools that actually enable the market to still get the fundamental things that it needs, which is return on investment done? How do you kind of incorporate that thinking? That ultimately is what has to happen out in Southwest, is to use the other kind of battlefront. There has to be an environmental solution that enables landowners, whether we agree with their assumption of development rights or not, that enables them to get something. And furthermore, back to the kind of a nuance on the extending the boundary out, it can't just be public money, because there's not enough public money.
With State Highway 130, though, it's a 91-mile, 40 miles under construction, which leaves the other 50 miles. I do think we've had a role in the education through the summit we had last year, last December, and meetings we've had since. Understanding the urgency of the issue, we did two things. First of all, we applied for about a $600,000 grant to develop a plan, which is pending. It's got favorable review. I think we'll get it. The other is realizing we've done a pretty good job of bringing the planners together, and they've been meeting on an ongoing basis for the last year. But we had to also bring political leaders together. We asked Kurt Watson Kurt's kind of interesting because he's going to be a state senator, but he's not running against anyone, so he's got a lot of energy, and so he's taking the time that he would be spending on the campaign and investing in the State Highway 130. He's been meeting every other week with most of the political leaders in the corner, about 80 to 110 people. Some of the jurisdiction, not to minimize the very important issue that Jim's raising about the cost of annexation, which are big issues. But I think Pflugerville and Austin probably are in a I think a good plan in place. We have some challenges. Other jurisdictions like Hutto may be a little, more challenged. But I also think that whatever happens in that first 40-mile corridor is going to inform the second and third segment of state highway very negatively upon. So I guess I'm a glass is half full.
I think this raises a really interesting point, though. Who's really going to, who's really going to make the vision happen on a very sort of nitty-gritty basis? I really don't think it's going to be planners and elected officials. Much as I love them both, and I know there's a lot of planners here, and maybe some future elected officials, I don't actually think that's where the action is. I think if we're really going to get the vision to happen, this plays to your point about the toolbox. What we need to be able to do, I think the people that are really make it happen are the development and business community guys and consumers. And the missing link, I think, in a lot of the ECT material is, and I mentioned it before, but I really want to break it down to this level. It really has to do with economic analysis. As a consumer, if I buy a house in Circle C, or I buy a house in the desired development zone, what does that really mean to my bottom line, my investment in my home, my property value, my ability to pay for my kids' education? What does that really mean? What does it mean in dollars? Where I build my house, where I buy a house, where I rent my apartment? We need to be talking about that. We need to be going to the development of business community saying, this is the difference in dollars. If you build your company out, in west part of town where it's absolutely gorgeous, you don't build it in the corridor that we've sort of laid out as planners and elected officials for where major employers should go. They're the dollar trade-offs. When we talk about, one of Michael's great contributions to Austin is helping us understand better our economic incentives and our bond packages. Really understanding what are the dollar and cents implications of the choices that we make. Fritz talked before about ECT, laying out the choices and consequences. You can't do that in planning terms, talking about toolboxes, even though it's important. Most people don't know or care what a toolbox is. And we really can't do that just in political terms, which, is interesting that we don't have to do it in dollars and cents. Pick one of these two things, a sprawl-inducing choice or a sustainability-inducing choice, and here's what it costs you, A or B. That's how plain we have to get. That's our communication challenge.
You talked about the great board of ECT. Who else makes up ECT?
It's an 80-person. It's an 80 or so.
63.
Seems like 80. It's a huge board. It's always been a huge board. It has representation from neighborhoods, from the environmental community, from transportation community. It has regional representation from the 5 counties. It has elected officials. It's a smorgasbord of people. It doesn't have as many women as it should have. It doesn't have as many low-income people. It definitely doesn't have as many minorities. And that's been an issue that we've openly talked about and been openly criticized for 5 years.
Although at points it's had much better, quite ironically, African American representation, I think, for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, and that's not an issue that is just plagues the ECT board. That's an issue that a lot of groups are struggling with. And at one point, a county judge who happens to be a minority, at one challenge, you got to be the diversity that you say you want to be. It's not enough just to talk about it and say, well, God, let's find X number of women and we'll put them on here and then we're diverse. You got to be that. So, and that's a challenge that we face, and we haven't obviously met that yet. Part of the
though a challenge, another diversity challenge, which is kind of counterintuitive, but reinforces what Robin's saying. We haven't had as good a representation for the business community as other efforts like this. There hasn't been, maybe it's because Austin tends to be kind of an academic, state government kind of place, but we really haven't had, we've had some prominent business leaders, and Jim mentioned Neo Story, and then another prominent business leader who was very important early on, been as well as he once was for a leader.
Well,
But he really hasn't had.
We should talk about that a little bit, because I think places like Utah, Envision Central Utah, is that what they're called? Envision. That-
80% of the states in one city, so they can do that.
Right, but they've also had, I think they've had better luck